it is a process. David Matos, that's one of the things that he specializes in. But you've got to start working with David, or the buyer's got to start working with David well before you even get to contract stage.
But I find that relocation companies, and most of our folks, I suppose, or a lot of them are reload people with the companies, with the whatever.
Okay.
And they come armed with their companies.
Right. That's a great question. And it goes back to what is a resident alien, what is a non-resident alien. Okay. That's where it goes. You know, is a work visa classify them as a resident alien? You know, those are questions you have to ask. Yes.
With a relocation company, if the relo is actually becoming the seller, then it's not an issue between the relo and that actual seller. Is that correct?
That's a great question, because you have that gap, right? Right at closing, usually it goes from the seller, and then a warranty deed to the relo, and then a warranty deed from relo to that, right? Guess what? It's still a real property transaction. Okay, so what happens is, yes, your buyer didn't purchase it directly. Indirectly, they purchased it from the seller, right? But the warranty deed says they purchased it from the relo, right? But what does the IRS look at? They will put a tax lien on the property. So whose responsibility does it become then? The buyer's. Okay? So you have to, you know, look at these items. You're gonna see a lot. I mean, it's becoming more and more prevalent in our market. Yeah.
At one time, it was a title company matter to handle. It is no longer. And this little waiver that we showed you just a second ago says, here's my King's X, I'm out.
Because we don't insure it on the title policy, okay? And then if you look in your packet, there's a couple questions that I found very important from the IRS website that we got. The question number 2 is if the
What page are you on?
it's kind of towards the back. It's the questions. You'll see them. Okay, and I kind of start a couple and liked a couple questions, but these are just common asked questions about Firpta. One, if the foreign seller has a tax ID number, does this eliminate the withholding? No, Firpta requires every buyer and seller to have a tax ID number, including foreign buyers and sellers. Therefore, the fact the foreign seller has its tax ID number does not eliminate the withholding, right? What if your foreign seller doesn't have a social? Well, then they're going to have to get one, and they can apply for that prior to closing using, I think it's a W-7, and they can apply for a social, right?
The seller has to have a social?
Yeah, yeah. Another one I found very interesting. Okay, does this apply for foreign corporations? Yes, it does, right? What if the seller is selling a vacant lot? They own a lot, and the sales price is under $100,000. Does it apply? It does, because there's no improvements on it. It's vacant land, so it's regardless of the sales price, right? It's one of those exemptions that you might not know that you've got to give them advice on. We were doing a property, $900,000 a lot in Carlton Wood. The seller was foreign, and they were saying, well, we don't own it, right? Or we don't have to do it. Well, yeah, you do. You know?
This problem doesn't happen until you sell the property.
That's correct. That's correct. It should be. It should be. When you're representing a buyer, you need to be asking for the seller's certificate. And
Even if their name is Bob Jones?
That's right. That's right.
Marty, in this Q&A section, it keeps referring to tax ID number. You keep saying social security number. Is there a form of tax ID other than a social security number?
Okay, great question. An individual will have a social security number, okay? Corporation will have a tax identification number, or a TIN, okay? In the IRS, they refer to everything as a TIN,
Okay.
tax identification number, whether that's a social or an actual TIN. It just depends on the person and how how vesting is for that particular property. Yes, ma'am.
What if it's over 300,000? You were talking earlier about 100.
Right. Over 300,000. One of the things says if the sales price is over 300, Firpta could apply, right? But you have to look. There's 9 other exemptions.
But it also applies if it's under 300,000.
It could.
If the buyer is not going to use the property as their personal residence for at least half of the year.
For 2-year period of time. And, determining, because Firpta, there's 2 ways, or I'm probably saying too much, but I'll give you enough to scare you. Okay? Right. Firpta, or the IRS says, okay, what is a resident alien? What is a non-resident alien? There's 2 qualifications. Okay? One being a green card. Green card qualifies them as a resident alien. Okay? The other is, it's the substitute, I forget what it's called. I can find it for you. It's right here on my questions. Yeah. I'm going to refer you to, I'm going to refer you to a CPA. Okay, one of the exemptions, one of the classifications for a resident alien is a green card, or they can do, where's it at? Hold on. Substantial presence test. Okay, and they mentioned it in the video. It's called a substantial presence test. Okay, but understanding that or determining that present test. Like Steve said, 50% over a 12-month period, over 2 years. Are you willing to make that determination? I know I wouldn't be.
Say it's a couple. Half of the couple is green card,
Mhm.
the other half is American citizen.
Great question. 50%.
That would help with you.
And you said it's a buyer that you're
Well, it's I sold a house 3 years ago.
Right.
And I'm trying to get the.
Right.
under contract right now. So if I go back and I tell Marissa, you've got to go to a CPA now and straighten this out, because you bought it with your green card, and we didn't close until we produced that green card.
That CPA is going to say, okay, you have nothing to worry about, or you have something we need to get to work on.
And she works for a foreign national company that's not even the nationality
Right.
that she is.
Right.
So,
That they don't matter. So, but to answer your question, because it was a great question, you have a seller that is a United States citizen, Mrs., and Mr. is a foreigner. Does Firpta apply? Yes, it would still apply, but only on 50%. Right? So if the sales price was $400,000, instead of withholding $40,000, you would withhold $20,000.
Were it
Right.
possible under those circumstances, would it have been better to have it bought as separate property? Just to be-
It's very hard to determine that, because a title company is going to require the spouse to sign the warranty deed, because we're a community property state. Okay? So at that point, the IRS would say, hey, wait a second, they're married. Texas is a community property state. They cannot prove that no commingling of funds were used for this loan or to purchase the property. Therefore, they're liable, right? So there's a lot of different ways to interpret that.
So, if, it makes me want to say, hey, let me see your paperwork or get out of the office. Do you,
Hope it's not that bad.
well, it sounds that bad for sitting here. If you, if it's an American entity, a trust, or a company ID,
Mhm.
for tax ID purposes, even though the human being is maybe a legal resident, but not, an alien resident, but not an American citizen,
Mhm.
how does that affect you?
How did they take vesting? Did they take it in the name of the trust? If they took it in the name of the national company, right? The person that owns that is the corporation or the trust. It's not the individual at that point. It is
The entity
There you go.
Tax ID owns it, or whoever owns that tax ID, if it is an American entity, then.
There you go.
it would, take Firpta out of our life, correct?
Seek legal advice.
Even though.
Seek legal advice. Okay? I cannot, I can,
In Betty's transaction, it was, I thought, lucky that both the seller and the buyer ended up choosing the same CPA representative. You might have two, because the buyer, it's still a buyer's responsibility. I wouldn't accept a seller's CPA when I've got a $50,000 liability hanging out there. I might want to go get my own CPA qualified in this if it were me. I don't think it's something to totally avoid. I'm saying stop talking, stop calling the title companies that don't quite understand it, even us, and we study this all the time, and seek legal advice, seek qualified CPA. Say little.
So you're saying it is or is not a good idea to have the same CPA on both sides?
in this particular case, we found it very valuable, okay?
It was in our office. It was with another agent in our office, so that's
Yeah.
why it worked out well. And it was Christine Hale, and she spoke with the CPA. Stephen talked to the CPA. They both felt very comfortable with it. We offered to pay the cost of it if the buyers were uncomfortable and didn't, for whatever reason, but that, it didn't come to that. But as you said, we were lucky, but we both found out that calling certain other CPAs after we all made phone calls, no CPA understood it fully and said, I don't think I want to handle this, I don't know enough about it. So that was,
You know, Betty was a little bit worried at the very beginning of her transaction. She learned a whole lot through this. There was a lot of conversations with us, and every time it was, you guys need to call the CPA, you need to do this.
Most title companies don't understand.
Transaction I'm dealing with right now,
Mm-hmm.
they're Korean.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta call them and say, hey, are you an American citizen?
Are they buying or selling right
Well,
now?
they're buying, but if they need to know up front.
I would think it's good advice to seek a CPA now to find out how to hold that property that may be different than an individual's name.
That's right.
Seek that advice.
It's very, very important. I mean, I cannot stress it enough. And it's not, you have to remember, it's not the title company's responsibility. A good title company will help you recognize the red flags, right? We will help you recognize those red flags. On every transaction that I have, my team asks, when we get certain information, we ask, are you a United States citizen? You know, and it's not for the purpose of being nosy or being un-PC. It is for the purpose of offering an additional service to help you, because we know that paragraph 20 probably did not get disclosed.
And I know that these people have bought and sold houses
Yeah,
in different areas.
right. And so in our area, does this happen? Most people say, well, you know, I've never heard of Firpta. It happens all the time, all over the United States. It just happens that it has not been a very large issue in our marketplace.
Marty, what's the percentage of foreign sellers nowadays in Syria? Any idea?
I don't know the exact percentage, but I will tell you there's a lot of the buyers nowadays are foreign.
So that means sellers will be
Right.
too.
So, and we're seeing it more and more and more and more and more because more companies are relocating here. Okay, it is something that should be on your forefront. When you are making an offer on a property, you require per paragraph 20 that they provide you with that information. That's how you get around not being PC. Contract calls for it.
Okay, question. What you just said is, when we're presenting an offer
Mm-hmm.
on a property, we require that the listing agent or seller provide us with this certificate that's called for in paragraph 20.
I would. The contract states it.
I know. They're gonna go, what? What are you talking about?
The contract states it.
Well, we've got how many other stupid forms yet?
But yeah, but normally we're looking for that at closing. What you're saying is with the offer, that we want this back.
Right, because what if you get it, because it's not a requirement of the title company, right?
It's not been posted.
So since it's not a requirement of the title company, and you receive that letter at closing, right? Could it delay closing? You betcha.
Is there a promulgated form for this?
I don't know if Trek has a promulgated form or not.
So should we provide one with the offer?
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Frank, we should-
What I can do,
Provide it with the listing of the-
Frank, what I can do is there's a form. It's not printed out. There is a form here that I can email you. It's in Word format that you can send to your advisory team and get it modified if you want, whatever, because you're supposed to have it. Remember, this has been around since 1985.
Well, I'm going through one right now with Marty and the sellers. You know, I asked them on this, are you foreign national?
Right.
And when we were doing the contract. And they said, no, we pay taxes, we have a social security number, we have a green card. So that's all I know.
They didn't answer the question, did they?
Well, I thought, they thought they did.
You thought they did?
I thought they did, and I think they thought they did.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yes.
sure somebody said, I think it was you, Marty, that you should give this information to your buyers when you start working with them, but if you don't know a house, so you don't know which seller you're going to be.
Right. No, you would want to give. Going back to your question about that, is if you were working with a buyer that is foreign, you would want to let them know that there is a Firpta tax. This is what it stands for. I would recommend that you talk to a CPA or a tax attorney to make sure that when we get to the point of contract, that I can call that CPA and they can tell me how they want me to show vesting. So you purchase the property correctly to protect yourself.
In the
In other words,
future.
not in their own names,
It-
some other.
Right. I mean, there's ways they structure it to where it eliminates a future potential liability.
So how long does it take to get that documentation done with the CPA for a buyer?
It could, I've seen it as soon as 30 days with David. I've seen it as long as 180 days. So it just depends on the complications of that particular
Well, it
person.
sounds like any buyer that we're working with, we need to alert them to this, because if you take out a house and it's a foreign national, they could be liable. I've
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
known to.
Texas
say
Real,
that to 'em.
that's right. Texas Real Estate Commission
Gee,
put it in there for a reason.
And you know what they
why
tell
don't
me?
they teach that in MCE with contract coverage?
No, I've only been in Texas for about 6 years, so I barely remember what I was taught when I was at school here. And what they tell you with regard to that is, oh, you need to tell people that if they're foreign nationals, they may have some withholding when they go to sell their property.
It's a pretty big.
That's
We're finding
not
out the
right,
buyer is the
no.
one who's
That's
It
liable.
is.
That's what's a
See,
surprise to everybody.
and if you look on page, I think it's page 2 of your handout. I'll show you.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, if it were me and my buyer was 300,000 or less, my first question is, are you gonna occupy this property more than half the time?
Yeah.
And if my buyer said yes, it basically takes care of whatever house that they're buying, in case it's a foreign seller.
See, and that can change
The
too.
Woodlands, probably more homes over 300 than
Yes.
us.
Yeah.
See, but that can change dramatically, right? Okay, with that statement. Because what if they go to get a loan and the lender does not process the loan as a primary residence? What if they process it as an investment property?
Which a lot of them are.
Which a lot of them are. Guess what? Firpta. Because they processed it that way, right? So then they have to go to, and the buyer's responsible for the tax, but then they have to go, then the seller's going to get all upset because you're withholding, but you told me you were buying it as your primary residence. Well, I changed my mind. Well, okay, now Firpta applies.
I bet
Right?
this has been going on in California for a while.
It's very big. That's where most of the lawsuits, California and New York are where most of the lawsuits are from,
Well,
okay?
California's suing now because of placket listings.
Yeah.
And coming soon, there's a whole bunch of them going on out there now.
So if you look at page 2 of your handout, item number F, it says who is responsible? The transferee/buyer is the withholding agent. If you are the transferee/buyer, you must find out if the transferor is a foreign person. The buyer is responsible. It is not the seller's responsibility to determine whether it applies. It is the buyer's responsibility. They put everything on the buyer because the buyer is reliable. Okay? Going back a little bit further, What are the two ways for the buyer to have 100% satisfaction that Firpta is not going to apply? The withholding from the IRS, withholding certificate from the IRS, or the buyer requires the withholding.
So if they do require the withholding,
Mhm.
is the title company going to withhold and send to the IRS?
That's a great question. We at that point, I can provide you with a form. It's called it's written instructions on what the buyer wants me to do. Okay, and it's a promulgated form, or not promulgated, but it's a form that we already have typed out. We send it to everyone. The buyer and the seller sign it. It's got a few things in there that says, okay, withhold this amount. We're going to provide you with these forms at closing, and we have you have up to 72 hours to return it back to the IRS once it closes, but we overnight it and certify it the very next day. And we keep copies of that.
These forms they speak about, the 8288, 8288A, A, B, and C, and whatever other forms. We are not qualified to tell you that they're filled out properly at all. You provide those to us, we take the money out, we ship it off with a certified check to the IRS. Now, this is just to watch out for. The seller can go right after their money. They just need to
Apply
get
for
the
it.
IRS and apply for whatever refund they're gonna get. They don't even have to wait till next year, as we understand it. They can go after their money immediately.
Right.
But it has to go to the IRS.
It has to go to the IRS.
So they may get part of that 20% back.
10, and yes.
Yeah.
What they-
10%.
It's 10%, not 20%.
Yeah, they could get it all back, right? That's just not up to you to determine, me to determine, them to determine. It's up to the IRS to determine. Now, Bill, you asked, do we have to send it to the IRS? No. Guess what? That's what my written instructions tell me to do. Can I withhold it and give it to the buyer, or to the buyer? Yes, I can, but it's going on the HUD. The lender's got to approve it. Okay?
Well, not only that, the seller then is trusting the buyer they don't know.
That's-
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the seller doesn't want that to.
And most of the time they
Buyers
ask us to send it to the IRS. So, any questions? Have I freaked you all out enough to deter?
We unwind my deal.
No, don't be afraid of this.
Your people, Bill, get a copy of the green cards and send them to Gloria.
Just be better educated. No when not
So-
to speak.
Well, this is the first, for me anyway, that I'm really know anything about this.
Yeah.
Marty and I, we gave this seminar to another group, and because it wasn't handled, it wasn't handled properly by somebody else in our office, and we were diving into this, and both agents were speaking all kinds of things in the earshot of a buyer. Both agents were talking way too much. The buyer was hearing every word of this thing, and it could have gone really south. And their interpretation, by virtue of conversations they'd had with other title companies, was we didn't know what we were doing, and they were going to tell us who to call. We knew very well. We know they don't know. So in any event, we gave the seminar to this other group. They didn't know that they didn't know. And if we can leave this one with the fact that you speak less and you go get those professionals to represent those guys, and you might consider a waiver of your own when it comes to this matter. And that should keep you probably in a very safe area. Don't be afraid of these transactions, just cover yourself.
It's on my list.
Got it.
In fact, I've already emailed Marty and asked for the sample.
So-
What about at a closing, our situation, I'd want to get that signed.
You'd probably want to get that.
Not
I want
closed.
to talk to
You would probably want to get it signed.
Don't
You
want
know.
to shy away from these transactions. You're better equipped right now to deal with it.
No, going
How do
into
we
it, but
know
when
who's
you're
the
in one that you
transaction
didn't
that
know
this
about.
is a worry with?
You don't. That's why you don't know. You don't know which ones it applies, which ones it doesn't apply. That's why Trek has that paragraph in the contract.
So we need to be asking the listing agent then.
You do. You do.
And
I
when
wish
they,
I had been asked for
and
it.
when they tell you that the person's got a social security number, you know that's not
That means
enough.
nothing.
I didn't know that before today.
Yeah.
There's a few
green card.
thousand people out there bogus.
Right. It's not even just a bogus social. It could be a valid social, but they're still a non-resident alien.
So what do we do about people that are in transaction right now?
Ask.
I just learned about this, and
ask. It's better to ask now than later, right?
We are of the opinion that we now, whether the person's name is Williams or Miller, we ask.
Oh.
And our position is, you know, it's an uncomfortable place to go, but we'll do whatever it takes to protect both agents.
We're looking out for you. One of the ways, like I was telling you, I've noticed red flags, right? I will bring it up to my agents and
That's
say,
what you did with us.
yeah, right.
Exactly.
This is a situation that might apply. Please look into it. Here's the Firpta information, right? I brought the red flag up. I noticed it. I will help out in that way, right?
The name that was a red flag?
Well, what we asked the question.
But this is at closing.
No,
No, this was within a day or two of the time we.
Right.
They were
Mike-
doing the title work for Christine and Stephen and I.
Right.
And Marty emailed all of us and said, hey, guys, and to make it worse, her sellers are in Dubai, so everything that they have to have signed on their end, they have to go to the
Consulate.
consulate.
But what I did is I just simply
So it's
asked
been
the
a long
question.
procedure. But everybody cooperated. I mean, everybody cooperated,
Yeah.
which doesn't always happen.
I just asked the question, are you a...
Way up at the front, then at that.
See, and this was
They have-
This was the same thing on bills. Betty's, I asked the question up front. I notified. Bills, same thing. They came in and they were signing a T-47 affidavit. We asked the question, right? At that point, me personally, I would want to know as an agent. So I let people know. I don't mind asking the question because title companies ask,
Wouldn't mind asking from now on, let me tell you.
right?
Well, you can use that paragraph.
Title companies ask ridiculous questions anyways, and we require some ridiculous things sometimes, right? And so I don't mind being that forefront. But the thing is that title companies shouldn't have to do that. Because you should have, per the contract, it should have already been taken care of. But most agents, you could go have a conversation with 25 agents right now. 24 and a half of them don't understand FERPTA. 24, or probably 25 of them don't even know what paragraph 20 says or the implications that it has.
In my case where I asked them, when we were doing the contract, are you a foreign person? And they say no. And if we pay taxes,
Mhm.
been here 4 years, we pay taxes. We have a green card. To me, that.
Okay.
to me, I didn't know. I didn't
That's a great question. What I would do, the little that I know about FERPTA, I would say, okay, I need a copy of your green card, because what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to submit that when we get an offer from a buyer. I'm going to need to submit that to them. Okay,
The buyer?
to the buyer.
Now, what is, I've never even seen a green card. Is it green?
It is actually
Does it have any personal information that?
no Social Security.
It says green card, and actually before it used to be green, that's why they call it green card.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like very green.
yeah. Now it's kind of whitish.
Doesn't have a
Yeah.
social security number.
No, it does not. But it gives their green card number, if you will. And what they can do is then the buyer could take that to their CPA. Remember, what is a resident alien? Green card. And then their CPA can advise them, okay, they have a green card, FERPTA doesn't apply. See the process? It's very easy, very simple.
CPA must, and we must pay him to advise.
I would.
Is that-
There you go.
have a-
But unless you are willing to take on the liability of the
That's my
future
question.
lawsuit.
Okay. I've had lots of foreign national buyers, and I guess sellers too, and I have always said, look, it's a different country from where you come from, please go see an attorney so you're protected from your side. And there is nothing I have nothing in writing that says that,
Well-
unless I make something up, which we all know doesn't happen.
See, this is why the video, this is why title companies have now gone away from asking for the foreign certificate, and now we've gone to, where's that one? The FERPTA waiver, okay? Or at least our company has done that, okay?
When do you do it, at closing? or-
We will get them to sign the FERPTA waiver at closing, okay?
Why don't you do it when you open
It's
title?
in the,
I could, but getting it back is another thing, that everybody's already signed so much. Because for me, FERPTA is not
No,
a liability.
agents are.
But this doesn't protect you, right? So like the video, not only should you ask for the seller's foreign status, but it also recommended that you have both the buyer and the seller sign a waiver that protects you and Remax, the brokerage. Right?
But still, it doesn't protect you from all the hassle and what would happen if what unwinds because of that.
Well, the thing at that point is that you've learned enough to say, I'm not going to give you advice on it. Per this waiver, I'm advising you to go seek CPA or legal advice.
That name that we shared with you earlier, a lot of agents, I believe, use him. We've not used him, we just know that
He's been great, but he will charge, and that was made clear up front, and I don't blame him. I mean, you know,
What
it's,
does he charge?
it was $250 if I remember right. It wasn't that expensive. Now, it could get more expensive, I guess, depending on how complicated the whole issue may be. I don't know. Stephen's been, it's his deal. I haven't been involved in that end of it. But the gentleman, and he didn't call back right away, but it was right in the middle of tax season. So I think Marty sent him an email, and then he actually called Stephen and he said, I apologize, give me another week and I'll be able to handle this for you with no trouble at all after the 15th of the month, which I can understand. And as far as I know, the buyers are going ahead and meeting with them and getting everything signed.
Most relocation people, the relocation company's got this handled, right? But it still does not release the liability just because they're a relocation company. Okay, so keep that in mind. Yes?
So if it's over 300 and they have seller has a green card, it still could be subject to this 10%?
It could be because there's 9 other exemptions that you got to get answered,
Okay.
right?
I say the answer to that question is,
See,
it probably is subject to this, that the green card by itself, I don't think.
Eliminates it.
Eliminates it.
But if
It
it's
didn't
under
say that as
300,
one of the 10 exemptions.
No, it just said non-resident alien, right? Remember, it's not a foreign person. IRS looks at it. You're a resident alien or non-resident alien. It's not foreign, even though that's the title of it. It's resident alien, non-resident alien. You were born here in the United States, you are a resident alien, right? You have a green card. Technically, per the 62 pages, you have a green card, you are a resident alien, right? It's for non-resident aliens. It's very important to remember that.
Maria's
Yes,
point, yes.
if you're born in this country, you are a citizen.
that's correct.
So
You're
if
not
you
a
have
resident
birth,
alien.
if you have, yeah, you said the other, I just wanted to confuse myself.
Resident alien?
No.
If you are born in this country,
You
you're
are a
not a
citizen.
resident alien, you are a citizen.
There's somewhere
That's
where-
right. Yes,
There's
yes,
somewhere where we need to ask them,
that's
for
correct.
the record, for our own purposes, for our own protection, what is your citizenship?
What's your, yeah, I mean, how you know how to put that politically correct so you don't offend somebody is you kind of walk that fence, but in all reality, you got to ask the question, and sometimes people they might get offended, but you got to do it.
So some people have dual citizenship,
Mhm.
U.S. and say Costa Rica.
Mhm.
Does Firpta apply?
What's dual citizenship? How do they have citizenship here in the United States? Usually dual citizenship would be like a green card, right? No?
I have those Dominican Republic, and I'm a citizen here. I was born here, but I have a citizenship there as well. So there, Firpta wouldn't apply because I'm.
You're a United States citizen here.
Puerto
Yeah,
Rican,
I don't know. I mean, where are they first citizen, right?
Yeah.
In a foreign country, and then they get it here. I don't know. I don't know how the United States deals with that.
There is a process for granting citizenship to people born elsewhere.
Wow.
Right. I know that, but can they carry duals still? I don't know. Yes,
And all the same rules apply to commercial property.
that's correct. Remember, it's real property, so commercial properties, yes.
Just closed on it, it was $1.2 million.
One of these,
But they withheld it.
See, but you realize that, or somebody in the deal realized.
Well, at closing. I mean, we talked about it before, but at closing, the seller said he would do it.
So there wasn't any problem, but that's not always gonna be the
But
case.
it was obvious that he was a foreign
From
national.
a- But I'm surprised that on vacant property, we sold a bunch of lots lately to a gentleman that's from out of the country, and I don't think we ever
you
talked to
sold
him
them
about
to
it.
somebody from out of the country,
Yeah,
doesn't apply.
But it
So
will-
they
It's
sell
Bill
it.
when he
He's
sells
living
it.
here and he bought the property, so what's gonna happen when he sells his vacant property?
And he's an investor, he'll be selling.
Yeah,
It's a
I'm just, yeah, it seems, and he's gonna buy some.
Okay.
house, so I think Stephen better talk.
Turn to
I don't know
page,
about the property.
turn to page 13 in your handout.
Dr. Seeger, remember Bill, I pushed all of them.
Yeah, 13. Turn to
Don't tell him I
13.
said that.
13.
Oh, I know. I always have that.
Here's some different scenarios that may be right. Assuming that the seller in each of these transactions is a foreign, what qualifies for the withholding, yes or no? Turn to the next page, it'll give you some examples, just a few. 300 sales price, buyer, owner, occupied. No. Lot, 75,000, vacant lot, yes. Why? Why? Because the buyer can't occupy the property.
It's on
Page
14.
14.
So if you're selling to a corporation, you can't be owner occupied.
Bottom in the middle.
There you go. What if the buyer's buying it as a trust or something like that, right? So
The key on this also is the 300,000 then, huh?
Yeah.
big.
If it's
That's
owner occupied and it's under 300, you're probably pretty safe with your buyer.
yeah.
But what happens if the status changes, like they have intent to occupy, and in 3 months they say, you know what, we need to rent it, we're not ready to move yet, something changed
Before closing or after closing,
after closing.
doesn't matter. They changed the use of the property after closing. Their intent when they bought the property was to own or occupy.
But how can you prove intent?
The rule actually says, Marty, that it have to be number of days in the year for the next year.
Yeah, but that's for when they go to sell the property. That's not when they go to purchase the property. Purchasing the property is right now, right? And it is the substantial residential test, the 50%, is for a seller to determine whether